students, here is our last artwork for the day, Stonehenge. What? I know. You've probably heard of Stonehenge. We're going to look at it in terms of the technological skill required to create it and its possible functions. Now, this is part of the Neolithic period, and, well, we've already covered so much ground today. So remember, we started in the Paleolithic with the woman of Willendorf. Then we walked over to Lascaux. We looked at the Hall of Bulls at Lascaux. And then we saw the bison at Altamira. And we were just over here at one of the oldest settlements, Catalhayuk, during the Neolithic. And we're going to cross the European continent. I'm going to go up here to the southern portion of England to a site referred to as Stonehenge. Now, we have to understand England was not an island at this time. What? Miss Cortez, you're blowing my mind. What do you mean? Okay. During the Neolithic period, the ice of those glaciers was receding to expose land. It also had dropped the level of the ocean. There is a narrow channel of water that divides England from the main continent of Europe. It's referred to as the English Channel. It's a small channel of water. But during the Ice Age and during the end of the Ice Age, as the glaciers were receding, the land between England and France, or between mainland Europe, was exposed. Meaning you could easily walk. It was not an island. You just walk across from the main continent onto another extended area. It was only later, after the glacier started to melt more, that the sea level rose and it created the English Channel. What does this have to do with art? Well, that's where the migration of people come in. It's much easier for them to migrate from one space to another when it's all connected by land. It's not an island yet. And the people who populated what would become the island developed these curious spaces that are rings of stone. Now, if we had more time to look at the prehistoric period, specifically the stone croppings in England, we would know that there were a lot of these. And there are a lot of these that still remain. We're going to talk about Stonehenge because it is the biggest and it has the most amount of archaeological activity around it. All right, okay, so Stonehenge. Stonehenge, as it stands today, is a kind of horseshoe of these weird blocky things. Some of them still remain upright. Many of them have fallen. And it is a site that tourists can visit today. However, based on the archaeological record, this is what it originally looked like. It was a complete circle of stones, and those stones that are on the top completed the circle in this round kind of roof-like structure. The interior stones had a horseshoe or a U shape, and then surrounding the outer circle and the inner circle were a series of smaller stones. What's really interesting about these stones is that they are not from local sites. What do you mean, Ms. Cortez? These weren't just like found 20 feet away, carved out of some rock and then picked up and moved over. No. These stones come from very, very, very far away. The larger mass stones come from about 70 miles away. Those smaller stones that create these circles in the interior come from 120 miles away. Excuse me, I mean 170 miles away. So these were really far and really heavy stones that were intentionally brought to this space. Again, we're going to have to make a lot of assumptions based on the archaeological record as to why and what purpose they served. Here's another view. Or here's a vocab term. These stones, it's very important to understand, these stones are single pieces of rock. They are not made of smaller stones that have been pieced together like Lego bricks. No, no, no. These are what we would refer to as megaliths. And that's your vocabulary term right there. A megalith, meaning a great stone. It comes from the Greek. Mega means really big. Lith, you already know that. Lithos, stone. So a megalith, big, big stone. A mega stone. All right, cool, cool, cool. So these megaliths are large, roughly hewn stones that were used to construct these monuments or structures. Back to the contemporary view, the view of it today. So these stones here are not made up of little individual pebbles that have been cemented together. These are massive blocks. Each block is about, oh goodness, where is it in my notes? Each block is about 50 tons. 50 tons. And from the earth to the top, each averages about 17 feet tall. And that's not including what's beneath in the ground, because it had to have been wedged up and set into the ground for it to stand up like this. So these are massive blocks that have been carted all the way here for some specific reason. The type of construction used to erect these blocks is referred to as post and lintel. And that's your next vocabulary term. Post and lintel, a system of construction in which two posts support a lintel. I'll go back to Stonehenge, but just to help understand this structure a little bit better. This is a diagram I created. So the posts are the things that are vertical, and they are held up because of the weight of the lintel. The lintel is the horizontal piece. The lintel is held up because of the posts. So this is a relationship in which the vertical posts hold up the lintel, and the weight of the lintel holds up the posts. This is the oldest system of construction for humans. And it's the same construction you use when you're making your Lego houses. If you want to make a doorway, what do? You get them pop, then you put that one on top. You were just using post and lintel construction to make your house. Cool. Oh, one more thing I like to point out. I like this image here because of the people. They help to give you a sense of scale. I will try to always include images of the artworks with reference to actual humans so that you can see how big, how wide they are. Now, when you go to Stonehenge, you need to book your tickets in advance, and they don't allow people to get this close all the time. There are only specific designated dates and times for this, and they're really popular. And so if you want to get this close, you have to book in advance and be aware of that. Otherwise, you'll be just the regular people who have to stay around the outside of Stonehenge. Here we go. Here's another view of it. Now you can see some of the megaliths have fallen, have collapsed over time. Here we are looking through the megalith at the smaller stones. These smaller stones are referred to as blue stones. They're not the same rock as these larger megaliths. Instead, these smaller, which, I mean, come on, be serious, they're still huge. They're over 6 feet tall. These smaller blue stones were the ones that were carted from 170 miles away. A good question to ask, and one that I would hope if we were in class together you would ask me is, Miss Cortez? Yes, student? Yes, student? What is it? Why is it called Stonehenge? Great question. Okay, let's break down the word. Stonehenge. Stonehenge because, well, it's made of stone. Henge is another word for a ditched area. A ditch? What are you talking about, Miss Cortez? Check it out. I'm highlighting, let me hide that first. Look at this. Look at this divot. This has been dug into the earth. It's a intentional ditch around this crop of stones. A ditch, another word for it, is a henge. Notice I'm saying henge and not hedge. I had heard a few students say hedge. It's not a tree, bush, hedge. No. Henge. And it's a ditch. So stone and a ditch. And this would have been part of the original structure itself. So whoever built this or added on to it, because if you'll notice in the date, from 3000 to 1500 BCE, meaning that it was added on to over millennia. At that time, that henge would have been a part of this larger circular space. So what was the function? Well, and here's another view of it. This stupid highway used to be right next to Stonehenge. It used to be a fast-paced cars right when you're trying to appreciate this beautiful space. Since then, I was there in 2019. Since then, they have redirected the highway about a mile and a half away, so this is not disturbed area anymore. But what I'm highlighting here is another element of Stonehenge that was located outside of the henge. This stone here is often referred to as the heel stone because it marks the rising of the sun during the summer solstice. What, Ms. Cortez, what are you talking about? If you were to stand in the center of Stonehenge at an area often referred to as the altar stone, it's right over here, and you were to look through to the heel stone, right over here, what you would find, here's my better view, what you would find is that on the day of the summer solstice, now if you're not familiar, the summer solstice is the longest day of the year. It comes around every June 21st. It's the longest day of the year because it's the day in which the sun is in the sky for the longest amount of time. During that summer solstice, the rising of the sun over the horizon comes right through the heel stones. There were two originally, only one stands today. And it directly hits the center stone within Stonehenge. In fact, if you were to consider all of the constellations, I know I'm zooming around, all of the constellations and movements of the sun, this is a map showing you how the stones line up with not only the sunrise of the summer solstice, but the sunrise of the winter, where's my winter? Sunrise of the winter solstice, the sunset of the summer solstice, the sunset of the winter solstice, and a moonrise and a moonset. What archaeologists believe this site to have been was some kind of astrological calendar. Now, the purpose of this calendar, which still is accurate today, is mind-boggling to think, right? That they were like, okay, one day of the year, it's going to go over that horizon point. Put those two stones right there. Boom. And then to mark out the movements of the sun. Some people think perhaps there was sun worship here, which would make sense. Have you ever been to England? It doesn't get a lot of sun. It's very gray, it's very cold, it's very rainy, often. When summer hits and there's a heat wave, people in England lose their minds. They love it. They go crazy. So, sun in England, a worshipping of the longest day in which that hot, blazing star floats through the sky. What we've also found around this site are various burials. And these burials are of people who have been left with lots of rich gifts of textiles and jewelry, which means they must have had some kind of high status. Others have suggested that this might have been a sacred site of healing, and those who were buried around were those who were seeking some kind of healing properties, or maybe they were part of this sacred sect or religion. We just don't know. We do know for sure that this was not part of a main village center. We have evidence of a nearby village about 5 miles, 10 miles away. So they lived somewhere else, and they built this using blocks from very far and very difficult to bring over. Oh, why is it so difficult? Because they didn't have the wheel. The wheel had not been invented. So how did they get these massive heavy blocks? I like that question because it brings me to this game here. I'm highlighting Stonehenge game. Below in this list of videos, I'm going to put a link to the Stonehenge game. It's a simulation game where you can try to figure out, using the limited tools at your disposal and the manpower at your disposal, how would you bring and then erect these stones. In fact, people still often will do recreations of Stonehenge. What I mean is they will try to recreate using the tools that they know that they had and try to figure out how did they get these massive 50-ton blocks up without, breaking or crushing somebody. It's pretty cool, right? I know. What's even more cool is that recent study of the larger site using this contraption here. It's basically an ultrasound machine that was hooked up to a tractor and run across the valley around Stonehenge, and what they found were more stone circles hidden underneath the surface of the land. These are undiscovered sites, and archaeologists have now identified and prioritized these as new archaeological sites, which hopefully will provide us with a few more pieces of the puzzle in understanding not only the purpose of Stonehenge, but the people who built Stonehenge. Okay, so that is it for today. I know it was a lot. I hope this gives you a sense of how we'll be going through this class and the lectures, the period styles, the terms, and I'll see you next week. Bye.